In this video we're going to demonstrate how to collect a Tedlar bag sample, a soil vapor Tedlar bag sample using a syringe, and we're going to use an inline vacuum gauge to collect it. This is a vacuum gauge, and we call it an inline vacuum gauge. It reaches in inches of mercury. We're going to connect this onto our valve at the end of our soil vapor probe. We've got a little lure lock connection we like to use. You can use just standard tubing, can fit over it too. Twist our lure lock in tight, and we're going to connect our 60 mil or 60 cc soil vapor syringe, and that just gets pressed onto the inline gauge as such. And the first thing we're going to do is we're going to do what's called a shut-in test. We're going to test that all our fittings from this valve to our syringe are airtight, and to do that we leave our valve closed on the soil vapor probe, and we pull back on our syringe, creating a vacuum, and I'm going to shut the valve on my syringe off to the probe. So now we've created a vacuum inside this system, and we watch our needle. We're up at 15 inches of mercury, which is plenty of vacuum. And as long as our needle holds, we'll watch it for about a minute. As long as our needle holds and doesn't slowly decline, we know there's no leak in the system and everything is airtight. Okay, we've completed our shut-in test. We know everything is airtight above. Now we're getting ready to purge the probe. And before we do that, we're going to place our leak check bags. We have sprayed these rags with a chemical or a compound that we know that if the laboratory picks it up, we know we have some kind of leak. So it's going to test the integrity of our probe as well as our fittings again. So what we're going to do is carefully place the bag, making sure not to touch it with your gloves. And I'm going to place the bag around the base of the probe there. You can also place another bag if you have concerns at your fitting. You can place it near your fittings. That way, if there's any leaks in your fittings, it'll show up in your sample, and you'll know if you have a leak in your. It's a double check of your fittings above ground. So now we're ready to purge our soil vapor probe, and to do that, we simply open the valve on the probe. So our system is open now, and we're just going to draw back on our syringe, slowly pulling back, and we're watching our probe vacuum as well. We want to try and keep it under 100 inches of water, which in inches of mercury comes to between 7 and 8 inches of mercury. So we slowly draw back our syringe to purge the appropriate amount. And we've now taken out 60 mils or 60 cc's. We evacuate it, and we continue doing that until we have our full purge volume extracted from the well. One of the benefits of using a syringe to purge and use the sample is you can, by slowly drawing back, you can monitor your purge flow. We know that we can keep it at 200 mils per minute by slowly pulling the syringe back and filling 60 mil syringe in about 18 seconds. That gets us right around 200 milliliters per minute. So we can time that and know that we're reaching the right flow rates. We've purged our probe the appropriate purge volume amount. Usually the standard default is 3 purge volumes of our system. We've evacuated that out of our probe. Now we're ready to collect our Tedlar bag. So we're going to connect our Tedlar bag onto the side port of our 3-way valve connected to our syringe. So the first thing we do is got a little piece of connector tubing, kind of steps us up a size there, and then I've used a zip tie to connect it in between. I'm going to connect this to that side port on the valve, and I'm going to have my Tedlar bag on this side port. I'm going to connect this tubing onto the Tedlar bag. So now we're ready to fill the bag. At this point, you want to open the valve on the bag by turning this whole valve, not the top brown piece. You want to turn this whole valve about half a turn, half a rotation, half to one full rotation. Okay, now following the same process, we're pulling our vapor into this syringe at our same flow rate. After we've collected a full syringe, we switch this three-way valve to shut the system off towards the probe, and we slowly push the sample into the Tedlar bag. And we repeat this process until we filled the bag with roughly 3/4 of the volume of the bag. This is a half-liter Tedlar bag, so I want to put in, I'll put in roughly 300 milliliters of soil vapor sample. Shut my valve, push the sample into the bag. Okay, so we filled the Tedlar bag with approximately 300 milliliters or 300 cc's of our soil vapor sample. We can now disconnect the bag, making sure to close the valve on our Tedlar bag so it's nice and snug. Disconnect it from our probe and give a gentle push on the bag, make sure there's no leaks. And of course you want to label it with your sample ID, date, time, information, fill out your chain of custody, and the soil vapor Tedlar bag sample can now be sent off to the lab.